What if I told you that some of the most jaw-dropping scenes in movie history weren't acting at all? From wild accidents to intense real-life stunts, these 15 unforgettable movie moments were completely unscripted. Trust me, the stories behind these scenes are even crazier than what you saw on screen. Stick around, because the last one nearly changed movie history forever. Let's kick things off with Rocky. You know the scene. Sylvester Stallone running through the streets of Philadelphia, climbing the famous steps and celebrating at the top. But what you might not know was that none of it was planned the way it appears on screen. In fact, the filmmakers didn't even have permits. Stallone, who was both the star and writer of the movie, had a tiny budget to work with, so they didn't have the luxury of shutting down streets or hiring extras. Instead, they filmed Stallone running through the city with a small camera crew, capturing real Philadelphians going about their day. There was no warning, just a sweaty guy in a gray tracksuit running down the street with a camera following him. The raw, unfiltered reactions of people gave the scene an authentic vibe that no amount of planning could have captured. That's why some people in the background stare, smile, or look confused. In one shot, there's even a guy selling fruit, and when Rocky runs past, the vendor just waves him off like he's seen it all. It's a moment that's better than anything you could script, making it one of the most memorable in cinematic history. Pretty Woman is a beloved romantic comedy filled with charming moments between Richard Gere and Julia Roberts, but one of the film's most iconic scenes was actually a complete accident. Remember the part where Gere's character Edward surprises Robert's character Vivian with a beautiful necklace? When he snaps the box shut just as she's about to touch it, she lets out a genuine laugh. That wasn't in the script, but it ended up becoming one of the most famous moments in the movie. Gere decided to play a little prank on Roberts, and her laugh was completely real. Director Gary Marshall thought it was so perfect that he kept it in the movie. Sometimes, the best things happen when you least expect them. This unscripted moment made Roberts' character seem even more relatable, and it's one of the reasons people fell in love with the film in the first place. When you think about The Dark Knight, one of the first things that comes to mind is Heath Ledger's outstanding performance as the Joker. His portrayal of the villain was both mesmerizing and terrifying, and one scene in particular took on a life of its own. In the film, the Joker blows up a hospital as part of his chaotic plan. What most viewers don't know is that the explosion wasn't done with CGI. It was a real practical effect, and one part of it didn't go as planned. As the Joker walks away from the hospital after triggering the explosion, the detonator malfunctions, causing a delay. Instead of panicking or breaking character, Ledger decided to improvise, fiddling with the detonator and looking confused, just as the Joker would. Then, boom. The hospital finally blew up. Ledger's quick thinking saved the scene, making it one of the movie's most iconic moments. You probably remember the heart-wrenching scene in Titanic, where Leonardo DiCaprio as Jack and Kate Winslet as Rose struggle to survive in the freezing waters after the ship sinks. The icy breath, visible shivering, and their desperate attempts to stay alive felt almost too real, didn't they? Well, that's because they were actually real. The water the actors were in was freezing cold, so their reactions were genuine. They weren't faking it when they looked miserable and frozen to the core. Both DiCaprio and Winslet were dunked into ice-cold water multiple times to capture the scenes realistically. Kate Winslet even developed pneumonia during filming. Director James Cameron insisted on this realism to ensure the audience truly felt the peril and desperation of the sinking, making Titanic one of the most beloved films ever made. You know that legendary scene in Raiders of the Lost Ark where Indiana Jones, played by Harrison Ford, faces off against a menacing swordsman? The swordsman swings his blade with flair, making you expect an epic fight. But instead, Indy just pulls out his gun and shoots him. It's one of the most iconic moments in action movie history, but that wasn't in the script. Ford wasn't feeling well that day. He had food poisoning and was exhausted. The original plan was a big choreographed fight scene, but given how sick he was, Ford suggested something different. "What if I just shoot the guy?" he asked, and the crew loved it. Ford's illness led to one of the most memorable moments in movie history, proving that sometimes the best moments happen in the heat of the moment. In the opening scene of The Godfather, Marlon Brando's character, Don Vito Corleone, delivers a powerful speech while calmly stroking a cat. The contrast between his calm demeanor and the tense atmosphere sets the tone for the entire film, but the cat wasn't supposed to be there at all. It was a stray that wandered onto the set during filming. Instead of shooing it away, Brando picked it up and incorporated it into the scene. The cat's presence added a layer of unpredictability and menace to Corleone's character, turning this moment into one of cinema's most iconic scenes. Ironically, the cat purred so loudly that it made recording the audio difficult. But the show went on, giving us a legendary moment. Leonardo DiCaprio is known for his powerhouse performances, but in Quentin Tarantino's Django Unchained, he took things to a whole new level by literally bleeding for his art. In one particularly intense scene, DiCaprio's character Calvin Candy gives a speech filled with rage. At one point, DiCaprio slams his hand on the table, accidentally smashing a glass. The injury was real. Blood dripped onto his hand and the table. Rather than stopping, DiCaprio pushed through, using the real injury to heighten the scene's intensity. His co-stars, including Kerry Washington and Jamie Foxx, were shocked but stayed in character, and the result was one of the movie's most intense moments. This list wouldn't be complete without mentioning Tom Cruise, who's known for his dedication to performing his own stunts. In Mission Impossible, Rogue Nation, Cruise hangs on the side of an airplane as it takes off. Believe it or not, he actually hung from the side of a real airplane at 5,000 feet in the air, with only a harness for safety. His dedication to authenticity and fearlessness has set a new standard for action scenes, making this stunt one of the most talked about in the franchise. When it comes to intense emotional scenes, Apocalypse Now is in a league of its own. In one of the opening scenes, we see Martin Sheen's character, Captain Willard, having a dark emotional breakdown in a hotel room. But this wasn't acting. Sheen was intoxicated and going through a real emotional breakdown during filming. Director Francis Ford Coppola, recognizing the raw emotion, kept the cameras rolling, capturing a scene that showed Sheen's real pain, making it one of cinema's most haunting moments. Stanley Kubrick's The Shining is one of the most famous horror movies ever, and a big part of its success comes from Jack Nicholson's unhinged performance. In the scene where Nicholson's character Jack Torrance tries to break down a door with an axe, he sticks his face through the broken door and shouts, "Here's Johnny!" That line wasn't in the script. Nicholson improvised it on the spot, referencing the famous introduction of Johnny Carson on The Tonight Show. Kubrick was known for being a perfectionist and often required dozens of takes, but Nicholson's off-the-cuff line was so perfect that it made the final cut, becoming one of horror's most famous lines. Steven Spielberg's Jaws is one of the greatest thrillers ever made, but the movie's most famous scenes were born out of a malfunction. The original plan was to feature the mechanical shark, nicknamed Bruce, in many more scenes. However, Bruce barely worked, constantly breaking down in the water. Spielberg had to improvise, choosing instead to film the actors' reactions to the idea of the shark. This decision made the unseen threat of the shark even more terrifying, letting the audience's imagination run wild, and making the moments when the shark did appear all the more frightening. Finally, let's talk about the 40-year-old virgin and the chest waxing scene. Steve Carell, playing the awkward Andy, decides to get his chest waxed. This scene was 100% real. Carell's pain, screaming, and swearing were unscripted, as he was waxed in a single take. This dedication to realism resulted in one of the most unforgettable and painful scenes in the movie. Thanks for sticking with us! Next time you watch a movie, remember that some of those iconic moments may just be pure unscripted magic. From unexpected accidents to real-life stunts, sometimes the best scenes are the ones you'd never see coming. If you enjoyed this behind-the-scenes look, make sure to like, subscribe, and check out our other videos, because there's so much more movie magic to uncover. And trust me, you don't want to miss what we've got coming up next.